Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Roundup. We're on a little bit earlier than usual again today, but we are here. I hope you've got your coffees and your teas ready. And if you're watching back on Catch Up, then this is all of the latest royal news from the Daily Express. This morning, we're going to be talking about King Charles as he has a royal reshuffle. But Meghan and Harry have kept their titles. What do you think about this? And Qatar controversy, as Prince William says he won't be flying out for the World Cup. But he did wish all the boys on the team the very best as he was pictured this week. We'll be talking about all of that. Do you want King Charles to perhaps drop Meghan and Harry's titles? Not very likely, but would you like to see that? Do you think he's made the right decision? Do you want to see Prince William and perhaps even the new Princess of Wales go out to Qatar if they get through to the final stages of the World Cup? Or do you think they've made the right decision by saying their schedules are too busy for the winter by not going out there? There's been lots of controversy over Qatar. We saw this week a reporter being stopped with his camera crew despite having permission to film there. That is just one of the news stories we've seen coming from Qatar this week. And the tournament hasn't even properly started yet. So yes, we want to know whether you want to see royalty out there or not. There's been lots of controversy over that. And of course, we'll be talking about Meghan's podcast. She gets thousands and thousands of listeners per week. It might not be number one on the charts anymore, but she has hit the headlines again with that. And we will also be talking about King Charles having 2 birthdays. Now, his mother, the late Queen, had 2 birthdays. But we today will be hearing about a financial statement as things may be changing, as taxes might be going up for us. So do you think perhaps is now the right time to be having 2 birthdays or not? Do you think he's reading the room right? We want to hear all of your opinions on this. But first off, we're going to be talking about Prince William and Qatar. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Richard, the Daily Express's royal correspondent, on here shortly. But I'm going to take this to a poll initially, if we can, to see what you guys thought about this, about Prince William's Qatar visit, saying that he's not going. Do you want to see Prince William fly out to Qatar to support England for the World Cup 2022 in light of Qatar's record on human rights and LGBTQ plus views? No, 66%. Yes, 33%. So I think people have made their opinions quite clear on that one. What Qatar will think about that is another question. We've known a few people who will be going out there for entertainment purposes, but some big stars have actually turned down flying out to Qatar due to their record on human rights. I think we've got Richard in now. Richard, good morning.
Good morning. This is becoming an unfortunately regular occurrence. It's 2 weeks.
No, it's quite all right. I just spoke about the poll. So we had lots to talk about there. But now it's down to the experts, yourself, to actually give a little bit of insight to this. So Prince William was pictured with the England team this week, wishing them the best of luck.
He was, yes, and that's run him into a bit of trouble in Wales, which is also in the finals in the same group as England. Mm-hmm. He's Prince of Wales. I think we've touched on this before. I certainly touched on it in stories ever since the change of reign.
Yeah.
So he's got a potential, he's got a real problem there because he's Prince of Wales, Kate is Princess of Wales, but they are patrons of English sporting governing bodies and the national sides, in effect. And in Wales in particular, I think it's fair to say Welsh nationalists in particular, Plaid Cymru supporters have seized on this and said, you can't be president of the English Football Association, support England and be Prince of Wales. He is patron of the he's patron of the Welsh Rugby Union. But of course, Katie's her patronages include English Rugby Union, English Rugby Football League as well. So it's a tricky one for them. And William went to Wales yesterday to go to the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, for the first time since he was made Prince of Wales. And inevitably this came up, and it was brought up in a sort of light-hearted manner by Ellen Jones, the presiding officer of the Parliament. And he handled it quite well, actually. I mean, he she sort of almost apologised for bringing it up, and he said, "No, don't." And I think he wanted to say something about it.
Right.
And what he said was that he essentially I've heard Harry talking about this as well in the past. The word authentic comes up. They need to feel that they're being authentic, and he feels it would be a bit fake to suddenly switch allegiance to Wales, having become Prince of Wales, given that he's an avid football fan and has been president of the Football Association for many years now. I think it was 2005 he became president designate, and but he did do the diplomatic thing and said he'd be cheering for both teams, which actually I don't think is very authentic, and may, in a way, get him into more trouble as well. Because if you're a proper football fan, you can have sympathies for other teams, but you can't. Certainly, I was at the World Cup Euro 2016 when England got knocked out. I was in Nice when they lost to Iceland. It was a real humiliation. But Wales went on in that competition to get to the semi-final, and we were all cheering on the Welsh, but only after England had got knocked out. If it's England against Wales, as an Englishman, I want England to win. So he's in a slightly difficult position. I don't know how it can be resolved. He can't really be supporting both teams.
And am I right in thinking he's only met the English team? He's not met the Welsh team. So, I mean, it's blindingly obvious who his support's really behind, no?
Yes, that's right. And I think possibly, perhaps they should have thought about this, and he should have gone to meet the Welsh team as well.
You think he's aware that he perhaps has made a mistake?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, this was always factored in. I mean, Kate became, let's say, he's been doing that role for a long time now. Kate became the patron of English rugby rugby league in February this year. It wasn't as if they didn't know that at some point in the near future they were likely to become Prince and Princess of Wales. I mean, it's not an automatic that the heir to the throne is made Prince of Wales, but most have, and it was always, in reality, it was always going to happen at some point.
And you and I both know the Welsh are extremely patriotic, and rightly so. Do you think they'll take this, perhaps as another thing that they're like, why have we got a Prince of Wales who's not supporting the Welsh?
Well, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, the title of Prince of Wales is anathema to those who want Wales to be a separate country anyway, because it's symbolic of English dominion over the Welsh, going back to the reign of Edward I. And so there were princes, sort of home-born princes of Wales, but in the reign of Edward I, he subjugated the Welsh and installed his son and heir as the first sort of English Prince of Wales. And although some, I think Henry V might have been born in Wales, the majority of them have been English born.
Right.
And so it's and of course there's this whole issue of the investiture as well. they don't. A lot of Welsh nationalists don't like that. In 1969, when Charles was then Prince Charles was invested as Prince of Wales, it was threatened. It was threatened with there were threats of violence, and it's really a modern ceremony. I think Lloyd George invented it in 1911, if I remember rightly. So William's made it pretty clear, I think, that he's not looking for an investiture ceremony like that, certainly not as things stand.
Okay.
There might be a much less grand ceremony at some point in the future, but at the moment, the mood music is, we don't even want to talk about investitures. Don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, and also obviously there's this to think about with the royals for the World Cup coverage, but also the fact that they're not even flying out there. Now, obviously, there's been massive controversy over the Qatar World Cup with the choice of location, with their record with human rights, their record with, the list goes on, with how they treat women out there, with LGBTQ plus community. It is, it doesn't have a great record. And as I said before you came on, Richard, just this week there was I think it was a Danish TV reporter, whilst he was filming, got stopped despite the fact that he had permissions to film live by 3 separate Qatar representatives. So, I mean, that is just one story, and the World Cup hasn't properly started yet, and the fans aren't, in full swing. Now, do you think that perhaps if it was a different location and these these issues weren't brought to light, that the Prince of Wales would be going over there?
It's hard to say. I mean, he and Harry were at the World Cup in 2010 in South Africa. I was there. They were on a joint royal tour of Southern Africa, and they went to the England-Algeria game, which was a terrible game. He's not been since. So the palace has been sort of making that clear that it's not just about Qatar, and what we're really being told is this is not a snub to Qatar. He's got a busy program of events coming up. He and Kate are going to Boston for the the second Earthshot Prize Awards ceremony, and that there'll be a sort of a visit, not just about Earthshot, but around that. And I think what's been made clear is he didn't go to Brazil in 2014 for the World Cup then. He didn't go to Russia in 2018. There is huge controversy over Qatar, not least because there have been corruption allegations. He was involved in the bidding process to try and get this World Cup to be hosted in England. And, I think it's fair to say that there was a lot of dodgy dealing going on behind the scenes that resulted in Qatar getting this World Cup and England not getting it.
So do you think he's disappointed then, perhaps?
Definitely disappointed, and I think felt a bit exposed back then. When the decision was being made, but the thing is, whenever there's a major sporting occasion, international sporting occasion like the World Cup, like the Olympics, there are always going to be political issues around it, and it is a difficult one. I mean, thinking back now, Russia 2018, well, they were already sending certainly mercenaries into Ukraine. They'd already annexed Crimea, if I remember rightly. So thinking back on it now, in the light of everything that's going on in Ukraine, many people might think, well, why wasn't there a bigger controversy about England taking part in the 2018 World Cup in Russia? And in Brazil there have been issues as well, and there will be in every host nation. So what has been made pretty clear is that if England get to the final, then I think Prince William almost certainly will go out there.
Interesting.
delegation, with the Prime Minister.
Okay, that's if they get to the final. Big if, but it could happen. Could be our year. It might be coming home. Well, that's the Qatar controversy with Prince William. But we're going to move on to King Charles now. Now, a belated happy birthday to King Charles, but he's expected to have 2 birthdays despite the current cost of living crisis. People have been quite vocal about this. It seems, certainly for what I can see on social media. But to kind of give a bit of insight into this, Richard, that doesn't necessarily mean 2 lavish public celebrations, does it?
Well, no, but let's face it. If anybody said to you, would you like to have 2 birthdays every year? You would say yes, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. 2 cakes. Why not?
But yes, it's the difference between an official birthday when there are state celebrations, a military celebration, and the actual birthday of the monarch when they as the palace always says, we'll be celebrating privately. You ask every time. That's just a stock response. Although this time they did at least put out a picture of the king on his birthday, a new picture, so that was good. And there was a little story about him taking over Prince Philip's role as ranger of Windsor Great Park. But yeah, I mean, the whole reason for the monarch having 2 birthdays really is because it was really only goes back to the reign of Edward VII, as far as I can see. I mean, some of this is lost in the mist of time, but Edward VII had a birthday in the autumn, and it's more difficult to have a military celebration like Trooping the Colour, which is the monarch's official birthday parade, in the autumn or winter. So the idea was let's have the military parade in the summer, and we call it the official birthday. George V dispensed with that because he had a summer birthday, and I think I'm right in saying Edward VIII was the same, but then George VI, who had a winter birthday, went back to having a summer celebration, and the Queen Elizabeth II, who had a birthday in April, continued the tradition. And the king now, because his birthday is November the 14th, he's going to continue the tradition. What will be interesting is what happens when Prince William becomes king, because his birthday's in June. You would imagine that he might again dispense with having 2 birthdays and go back to having 1. And the same with Prince George, because he's a July birthday. But who knows? I mean, the royal calendar is pretty crammed in June, and William's birthday is often sort of around Royal Ascot Week, so I don't know how that would fit in with things. And July, well, it might be all right, but they do tend to go off on their holidays
and have private time.
Yes.
And the fact that he's very much following in his mother's footsteps has been something we've seen since he's taken over, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to say as well that the whole idea of the military parade, I think that goes back to about 1748, when George II celebrated his birthday with a military parade. And but as far as we can tell, George II only had 1 birthday.
Okay.
So, and sorry, this is because I'm a history graduate.
This is great. You're giving expert facts.
I was really confused when I was researching this, because I looked up, well, when was George II's birthday then? And some websites said October the 30th, and some said November the 10th. And well, surely that if you go back obviously to the days of King Alfred, it's more difficult to be sure about documentation. But I thought surely they would know. And then I discovered, didn't really know this before, it was obviously not my period, that in the reign of George II, the calendar changed. They switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. So the king's birthday, they lost 11 days. So the king's birthday changed during his reign in 1752 from October the 30th to November the 10th, which must
how bizarre.
Yeah, it must be really weird.
So strange. See, this is why you come on the Royal Roundup, so you can give these really interesting facts that no one else would seem to know. But there we go. Okay, and obviously today is a big day in terms of hearing more about the financial situation in the UK. So we're going to sort of move away from birthdays and kind of go into sort of like a more broader question here. Do you think, Charles, we've kind of, we have spoken about this before, but obviously it is changing week by week, it seems. Do you think he's aware of the current cost of living crisis, and he's perhaps changing the way that he works and what he displays on a public level with his wealth?
Yes, I think they're acutely aware of the cost of living crisis, and indeed, when the date of the coronation was announced, there was some briefing from royal sources that the cost of living crisis would be at the forefront of their minds when they were planning this, and that this would be reflected in a slightly shorter, well, in a very much shorter but also cheaper coronation. But they sort of tried to adjust the balance as well, because that it will still be I think we've discussed this before. It'll be like a royal wedding. It'll still be a massive occasion with a military parade or whatever. The cost will still be running into millions. But yeah, they are aware of it. And we mentioned last week about the Princess of Wales no longer giving out details of her outfits in general. I think they will on big, like when there's a state banquet or things like that, but an overseas visit. But I think the cost of living crisis may well be part of that as well. It's not a good look, is it, to turn up to a food bank in a £3,000 coat?
No.
But again, there's always that difficult balance, because people expect princesses to look like princesses, to look glamorous, and to look something different from the people you see in the high street. So, as ever with her, I think she'll mix and match, and there'll be some occasions when she's wearing a £35 dress, and some occasions when she's wearing a £3,000 dress.
I was going to say, whenever she does wear the £35 dress, they do seem to fly off the shelves. Yes. And do you think this is very much, do you think she actually likes the dress, or do you think she's trying to be more relatable with the public?
No, I think she does. Yeah, I think again, it's about being authentic, I suppose. And when she's off duty, you do see her in those sort of clothes. Sorry, I think I probably got off the subject a bit, but yeah, I think cost of living crisis is definitely going to be at the forefront of an awful lot of things that the royal family do in the next couple of years.
Okie dokie. I think we've got a poll on the subject that we were initially talking about before we digressed into a different one. If we can bring that up on King Charles. Do you think King Charles having 2 birthdays is going to be popular with the public, given the financial strain many people are having? No, 52%, but yes, 47%. So I think people understand, it seems, that as he's royal, and this is what we've seen with the late Queen, that they kind of get that, Richard.
Yes, maybe. It's interesting that you put, given the financial strain many people are having. So I suspect that may have affected the poll, which is almost at that magical figure of 52-48%, isn't it?
Yeah, very much divided, as per usual, with lots of things that we talk about. Okay, well, we're going to move on now onto King Charles' royal reshuffle. We've been speaking about this in many of the royal roundups, should I say, but it's very much now been put through documentation, hasn't it, Richard?
Yeah, it has. Until this week, we really didn't, we couldn't be sure. We were pretty sure that the king was going to ask his brother Prince Edward and his sister Princess Anne
Mm.
to be councillors of state to stand in for him when he's ill or abroad. But we didn't know if others might be asked as well. But no, it is just those two. There had been some speculation from constitutional experts that Kate might also be asked. So uh, uh, what was quite interesting was that the king chose his birthday to write to Parliament to ask for legislation to be brought forward as quickly as possible to make this legal change. And when I was intrigued by that, that was clearly sending a signal that this is an important matter that he would like to be sorted out. So the government responded in double quick time, and a bill was presented in the House of Lords the following day, early this week, and was given its first reading, and it'll be given its second reading on Monday, where there'll be a full debate. And the idea is that all remaining stages, the committee stage and the third reading of the bill, will be completed in the House of Lords by Wednesday, the 23rd of November. And then it will go to the House of Commons, and then it'll go up to the King for royal assent. So it's looking like it'll probably be sorted out by the end of November, probably, or early December.
Okay. And he's acutely aware that he needed to put this through quite quickly, which kind of shows the urgency of it.
Yes, it does. Clearly, one factor may be that William and Kate are going to the US at the end of this month, so that may have affected the decision making, because if he suddenly fell ill, was indisposed in some way, then either William would have to come straight back from the US and cut short his visit, or he'd have to ask one of the other. There have to be two councillors of state, as we know, so he would have had to ask somebody else to stand in. As you know, the Queen Consort is one, and then the first four adults in the line of succession, which is William, Harry, Andrew, and Beatrice, and all of them except of those four adults in the line of succession, only William is a working royal. And there's nothing to say that it has to be a working royal who does it, but I just think it would, there would be, as I said before, there would be uproar if Andrew and Harry were asked to do it. Yeah. Harry's abroad anyway, so he can't really do it. You have to be in England to do it. And Beatrice, I think the whole point of this legislation, it seems to me, is to sideline all three of them, to sideline Harry, Andrew, and Beatrice. And nothing against Beatrice; she hasn't done anything wrong, but she said when she was going to university and leaving university that she didn't want to be a full-time working royal. She wanted to have a career. She said there was more. I remember her telling me that there's more to life than just cutting ribbons. And so I don't see her. I'd be surprised if she ever performs this role, although nobody in the palace is saying she won't ever be asked. They're not saying that.
But obviously, Andrew, his brother, that must cause quite a strain on their relationship personally.
Well, I think Andrew has, from what I understand, he's very frustrated about his position, but it's been made clear to him that there's no way back, and I think he's starting to accept that, from what I understand.
And that was made clear by the Queen as well, I can imagine, the late Queen.
Well, I think it was and it wasn't. It was made clear at the time, but I think she was somebody who avoided conflict family conflict whenever she could. And so I think, there were, although it was made clear by courtiers that there was no prospect of him coming back, she never formally stated that, and she didn't, for example, replace him with some of his patronages. So, yeah. I mean, the other thing to say about that is that some MPs and some members of the House of Lords, I think, are quite keen to give this bill proper scrutiny. It's a very short bill, Council's Estate Bill. And I think they're probably not going to want to let the King and the government get away with being vague about this. So some of these questions, will Prince Harry ever be asked to be a Councillor of State again? Will Prince Andrew? I think some of the Lords and MPs are going to be asking questions about this. Now, whether the government will under pressure to answer.
And of course, Prince Harry's still keeping his title, despite the fact that he's not actually doing any, royal duties on a public level, because they want privacy. So, of course, that also brings up a whole world of problems, I can imagine, for Charles too.
Yes, well, I mean, the interesting thing about the titles is that the monarch has no power to remove their titles.
Right.
So it would need a change in the law. And Rachel Maskell, the MP for York, is bringing a private member's bill to Parliament in early December, if I remember rightly, which would do that. I mean, she is particularly concerned about the Duke of York, and she thinks that her constituents in York do not want Prince Andrew to be Duke of York any longer. And so she wants to create the facility for the King to take the title away from him. But the bill, a private member's bill, has got very, very little chance of making it into law unless the government takes it up and supports it. And at the moment, there's no sign that the government is going to do that, perhaps because the King doesn't want to do that. Perhaps the King doesn't want to humiliate any further his brother and his younger son. Would be my guess.
Oh, family relations seems to be quite difficult, it seems. I didn't know that was going through, so that's a good little nugget of information. Okay, well, we took this to a poll, so let's have a look, if we can, about the royal reshuffle. Do you think Harry and Meghan should keep their titles? No. 93%. And that got about 3,000 votes. Obviously, it's the Daily Express audience, but
yes.
I think people are growing tired, it seems, on the Daily Express. That seems of them having their titles. Would you agree, Richard?
Well, I think so. Yes, I think I think the public are tired of Andrew and tired of Harry and Meghan lambasting the institution at times. So, obviously, with this Harry memoir coming up as well in early January, that's at the forefront of some people, some royalists' minds. So, I think people who are interested in the royal family and who are, I think, monarchists tend to be anti-Harry and Meghan, and in most cases think that Andrew has let the family down as well. So I think, a lot of people want to see them lose their titles, but I'd be very surprised if that's going to happen.
No, so would I. I appreciate you are on to royal duties very shortly, Richard. So we'll just quickly go on to the next topic. Meghan's podcast. So let's have a quick chat about that, and then that will round up the royal roundup. And she's had guests on, and they've basically backed up what she said about how she's been treated within the palace, within the institution. You said last week on the Royal Roundup, a lot of the things that she's been saying, actually, when you go into the research of it, actually was not true. Is there any palace reaction to this at all, Richard, or are they still just keeping very much quiet on all of this?
No, I mean, I think they've stopped reacting to a lot of things that are said by the Sussex camp now, and just letting them get on with it. And I think there's probably a belief that as time goes on, their currency will devalue, and they'll struggle to get attention. But that's clearly not going to be the case with this memoir. So, but yeah, no, I mean, the podcast, I mean, as I say, it's caused quite a lot of entertainment, I think, because it just looks like Meghan is attempting to rewrite. Every episode looks as if it's Meghan attempting to rewrite history and presenting every bit of criticism that was ever levelled at her as misogyny, racism, sexism, so yeah, she's talked about the difficult, being labelled as difficult. She's talked about her activism this week and said that there was a very prominent individual, a woman who begged her to carry on with her activism just before she got married, and there's been a fair bit of speculation about who that might be. Writer in the Times very pointedly said that she was pretty sure it wasn't Princess Anne. She put a lot of money on it. But the thing is that the female members of the royal family all do a bit of activism, for want of a better word. They are activists. They do campaign, and increasingly so. In this reign, I think we'll see a campaigning style of monarchy from members of the family other than the king himself. So, Meghan's a great advocate for women's causes, but so is the Queen Consort. So is Sophie, the Countess of Wessex.
Yeah.
It's really about setting the right tone, and I think the problems that she in particular ran into, but also Harry, was that they struck the wrong tone. They struck a divisive tone that embroiled them in the culture wars, and I don't particularly like this term woke. She said in her podcast this week that she was happy to embrace that term. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but I think they did fall into a bit of a trap, and they have become hate figures from on the conservative side of politics, because they are seen as advocates of a more liberal agenda. And I'm not sure you can say that's the case of the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Queen Consort, Countess of Wessex, whilst they do make important campaigning points about things that they would like to see changed in our society.
And obviously the other members of the royal family have had longer to get the public's getting to know them and stuff. And as with anything with Harry and Meghan's relationship, seems everything just happens very, very quickly, and I think they expected the public reaction to go very, very quickly in their favor, whereas it doesn't quite work like that. We've seen the opinion of King Charles, for instance, has changed dramatically over the years, and that has taken years, hasn't it, Richard? So
yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, they always, the royal family always say they're playing a long game. They're fortunate in the sense that they don't have to worry, like politicians do, about short-term issues that affect their popularity. But the other thing to say about Meghan is that she. Somebody talked about these podcasts as celebrity pity parties, and she portrays herself as a victim, particularly of sexism. I would say in these, but the majority of people criticising her, both among the public and within the royal household, people who used to work with her, are actually women. So I don't know how that works.
No, I don't quite know how that works either. Okay then, Richard. Well, that is the latest on the Royal Roundup. You are now off to London to the palace. So I will leave you be so you can catch your train. You've not got long. So thank you very much, Richard, for coming on, and we'll be back at a time to be confirmed next week. Thank you.
Bye.